How can we address the division within our nation that might be risking the very survival of our democracy? Is there a viable compromise that might bring us together in the common cause of maintaining the Union and guaranteeing the rights of us all? Let's begin by defining compromise as an agreement or a settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. No compromise is possible without the commitment of both sides to come to an agreement. Are there examples from our past that might guide us in this time of crisis? The Great Compromise of 1787 was an agreement reached during the Constitutional Convention between delegates of the states with large and small populations that defined the structure of Congress and the number of representatives each state would have in Congress according to the United States Constitution. The Compromise of 1790 was a compromise between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson with James Madison, where Hamilton won the decision for the national government to take over and pay the state's debts, and Jefferson and Madison obtained the national capital, the District of Columbia, for the South. The compromise resolved the deadlock in Congress. Southerners were blocking the assumption of state debts by the Treasury, thereby destroying the Hamiltonian program for building a fiscally strong federal government. Northerners rejected the proposal, much desired by Virginians, to locate the permanent national capital on the Virginia-Maryland border. The meeting was organized by Thomas Jefferson, and only he, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton were present at the meeting.
Two Virginians and an immigrant walk into a room diametrically opposed foes. They emerge with a compromise, having opened doors that were previously closed. The immigrant emerges with unprecedented financial power, a system he can shape however he wants. The Virginians emerge with the nation's capital. And here's the pièce de résistance. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one else was in the room where it happened, the room where it happened, the room where it happened. No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens.
The Missouri Compromise was United States federal legislation that admitted Missouri as a slave state in exchange for legislation which prohibited slavery north of the 36th parallel, except for Missouri. President James Monroe signed it on March 6, 1820. The Missouri Compromise was very controversial, and many worried that the country had become lawfully divided along sectional lines. The Kansas-Nebraska Act effectively repealed the bill in 1854, and the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional in Dred Scott v. Sanford in 1857, both of which increased tensions over slavery and contributed to the American Civil War. The Compromise of 1877 was an unwritten deal informally arranged among U.S. congressmen that settled the intensely disputed 1876 presidential election. It resulted in the United States federal government pulling the last troops out of the South and ending the Reconstruction era. Through the compromise, Republican Rutherford B. Hayes was awarded the White House over Democrat Samuel J. Tilden on the understanding that Hayes would remove federal troops whose support was essential for the survival of Republican state governments in South Carolina, Florida, and Louisiana. Under the compromise, Democrats who controlled the House of Representatives allowed the decision of the Electoral Commission to take effect. The outgoing president, Republican Ulysses S. Grant, removed the soldiers from Florida, and as president, Hayes removed the remaining troops from South Carolina and Louisiana. As soon as the troops left, many white Republicans also left, and the Redeemer Democrats, who already dominated other state governments in the South, took control. Black Republicans felt betrayed as they lost power, being subject to discrimination and harassment to suppress their voting, and by 1905, virtually all black men were effectively disenfranchised by state legislatures in every southern state.